All right, great. We have one attendee in. Welcome, Colleen. Welcome. Is it Kalpana? Elizabeth? So excited today. I know we're a little early, but I figured I'd open up the room a little early and let some of you who are early birds like me get in. And we are so excited today. Hello, Ida and Kelsey. So excited for you guys to be here today. I'm Jeanette Simonson, and I have the honor of kind of having I want to call it an interview, but it's not really an interview. It's a conversation about strengths, the things that Girish and I are so passionate about, the thing that brought us together, and so excited for you guys to come in together with us as well. We've got Bill Stewart and Kelsey Bayless. Welcome. So excited for you guys to be in here. As you're entering, if you wouldn't mind throwing in the chat maybe where you're from, what you teach, something that you're passionate about, something that you currently do that is strengths-based. And we're really here to learn from everybody. Hello, Paul. Nice to see you again. And we'll get started in about a minute. But Girish, do you want to give our attendees a warm welcome?
Thank you. Thank you. Happy Tuesday to everyone. Or happy Wednesday if some international attendees out there.
Right. We have Elizabeth, who is a high school. She's working with the Migrant Education Program. Wonderful. Can't wait to hear about what you have to offer. And let's see how Kalpana, where are you from? Awesome. And we have, I love when I am able to make sure I say your names right. Welcome, Paul. Yes, coming in from Florida. You've done incredible work throughout the nation as well. So we're going to get started. It's the bottom of the hour at 4:30 here in the Colorado Rockies, 3:30 in Pacific, and really excited for you all to be here. So this idea was founded again on making sure that we can tap into the idea of why Thrively was founded. And again, I am so fortunate. I was on the receiving end of finding Thrively in 2016 as an educator in Chicago Public Schools, was able to bring it to a number of other school districts and had the wonderful opportunity of clicking the little green button at the bottom to say, hey, listen, I need some tech help and I have some questions. And not only did I get support, but I got the CEO and founder of Thrively. So I want to pass it over to him. And Girish, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit more about, this idea comes to you, you're a software engineer, you've been through education in India, and you decided to start Thrively. Tell us a little bit more about why that came about.
Thank you, Jeanette, for having me on this webinar. It's interesting to get interviewed. And then thank you all educators for joining in today. We appreciate your time and for your commitment to strengths-based, asset-based education. So thank you all. So firstly, a word of caution. I'm not an educator. So as Jeanette said, I'm a software engineer, serial entrepreneur, but I'm now going back by almost 10 years. So Thrively started as a personal journey for me as a dad, watching my son grow up. One of the things I was very clear about was not to reduce my son to a letter grade in school, right? And what is kids' identity in a school? You're an A grader, you're a B grader. We hand over all these awesome grades. And 5% or 10% high academic achievers. And rest 85% of the kids, they're getting the B's and C's and D's. All we are making kids feel every day on a weekly basis is like, I'm not good at science, I'm not good at math, right? And then by the time they get to high school, I'm not good at anything, or I don't know what I'm going to be doing, after high school. So we put a lot of questions in, kids' heads. We are good at telling kids what they are not good at, what they should be good at, but we don't tell them how awesome they are in who they are. So the question that really popped up in my head when my son was kind of going from elementary to middle, how do I help my son understand who he is, what his strengths are? So that's the question, I ask myself. This is the question I ask, educators and, superintendents that I talk to, right? If you go around the campus and ask your kids, who are you? What is that they would say, right? So that's the question I ask myself, like my son's what his strengths are. that's kind of led to the whole, strengths-based journey. As I said, we are good at teaching, telling kids what they're not good at and what they should be good at, but we don't tell them how awesome they are and who they are. As we at Thrively say, it's what's wrong with you and not what's wrong with you. Right. So that's the whole asset-based journey that kind of, I thought about it like almost 10 years back. That led me to working with, pediatric neuropsychologists, because, okay, now I want to know what my son's strengths are, and I need to look at an assessment instrument that will measure the strengths. That journey led me to working with, a lot of interviewing a lot of pediatric neuropsychologists. As you know, when you go into a lot of these when you talk to most of the neuropsychologists, they will tell you about everything wrong about the kid, right? They have 5.5 hours of assessment telling about breaking down everything and what's wrong with the kids. I was really looking for pediatric neuropsychologists who are using strengths in their vocabulary, and then found Janet. There are 2 of the 7 board certified pediatric neuropsychologists in California, Jamie Kimmel and Janine Weissman. So fortunate to find them during my journey. And, they were using a lot of strengths, in their practice, and then ended up developing the industry first strength assessment for kids. But one of the fascinating things I learned about the human brain, which actually led to starting Thrively, because just as an idea, needed to make sure that, I don't know whether many of you know that all humans are born with the same number of brain cells. So all of us here in this room, Einstein, Picasso, Michelangelo, and I keep reminding people that, we are in a great club, by the way. Mm-hmm. So we were all born with the same number of brain cells. As the brain gets stimulated, the connections between the brain cells increases, and more the connections, more information the brain can process. It just so happened, Einstein got more stimulated than many of us. Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. So as that's basically, there is a lot of BS around, genetics, and, kids are born to these families, so our parents, and that's why the kids became that. That is all BS, as I said, because how your kids look definitely depend on your physical appearance, but their cognitive ability has got nothing to do with your cognitive ability. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when I heard that, I was like, wow. Okay, 85% of the kids who go through the public education system, we have put them at a disadvantage, even though we know they can all be geniuses. Mm-hmm. That's what led to starting Thrively as a strengths-based movement, strengths-based journey. And as you know from our tagline, every child has a genius and they deserve to thrive.
Yeah. And, Girish, it's one of those things, this full circle moment. I was the educator at the time looking for something like this. I knew in my classroom, as many of you probably are, you see your students and what's in front of you are geniuses. And again, tapping into that ability to get them to see great coaches, great teachers, right? They elevate the potential that the student can see in themselves. And I have a story that many of you have heard, but when we took the strength assessment, and the 7th grade boy who really was moved to tears, I went over, thought something was wrong. And I sat down next to him. I said, how are you doing? What's going on? And he said, Miss Simonson, look at all the things I'm good at. It was in that moment. And it's still, I will tell this story 100 times, just like you'll tell the story about, all the students you've come in contact with. That boy looked at me with these big brown eyes. And it was the first time that I realized maybe nobody he's in 7th grade, in his 8 years of being in school, had recognized him for these things. I said, how many of these things do you believe are true? He said, all of them. All of them. So the trajectory of this child's life, I didn't track him at that point, and I hope that he's off doing amazing things right now. But you talk a lot about the conditions for creating a positive learning environment. And I think that was the catalyst in that moment in time for me to go, okay, this is the start of creating that positive learning environment. So talk a little bit more about what are those conditions?
Absolutely. One of the things that I should mention, most of you know this, the current education system was actually devised back in 1893. 1893. Someone decided that we're going to start the school at 8:30. knowing very well that, or may not be knowing very well that the kids brain won't be working well, at 8:30 in the morning. But someone decided we'll get the kids, early into the classroom. We're going to create 6, 7 blocks, and then we're going to teach science, English, math for all the kids. Okay, and that really hasn't changed much, right? So if we are starting a school, I know we have a lot of educators in this room. If you are starting a school today, how would that school will look like? One of the things we talk about is like, the primary years, helping kids understand who they are. Why am I here in the school? Developing the identity for them. And then in the secondary years, what is that I want to become? And how do I develop agency towards that? Right? That is how you can look at it holistically, talking about taking the curriculum out for a minute, right? So one of the things we talk about in Thrively, for me, as I was thinking about it, we are not, we put a lot of curriculum in front of the kids and, assess a hell out of them, but we are not preparing our learners to learn. We don't know who our learners are, and, but we are teaching every kid the same subject the same way. We don't know who our learners are, right? So how do we, so when in Thrively, we talk about the conditions for positive learning environment, right? If you step back, we talk about how do schools thrive and how do students thrive. When we create a positive climate and culture and a joyful learning environment, the schools are thriving. Then the question is, how do we create a joyful learning environment? And as we talk about in Thrively, when every learner in the school feels I'm known by my name, my strengths, and my needs, right? And then my feeling and functioning are supported, my well-being is supported, and I'm hopeful of what I want to become in life. So those are the 3 pillars of creating a positive learning environment: knowing the learners, the hope in them, and instilling hope in them, and ensuring their well-being. If we do that, we would have created that positive learning environment, a joyful learning environment. That's the beginning of that. So that's kind of where we started with Thrively. Let's not teach the kid without knowing who they are. When we talk about the well-being, we talk about in Thrively. 8:40 in the morning. Do we ask our kids, how are you feeling today? How are you functioning today? Before we go start teaching calculus, science, English, math, right? And then, ensuring, they're hopeful as well. Okay. So when we do that, the kids feel they're connected. There is a research that backs up saying 30x increase in engagement. Kids are 30 times more engaged when they think educators know their strengths. The biggest problem kids have is, my teachers don't know me. So when the kids are disengaged, then behavioral issues and attendance, they're all manifestation of that. So creating the positive learning environment, love to hear from the educators in this room as well. But, we talk about when every learner is known by their name, strengths, and needs, their well-being supported, and hope instilled, we have started creating the beginnings of a positive climate and culture and a joyful learning environment.
And back in the day when I first started teaching, and I won't date myself, but it was a while ago, we'd spend the first week with, getting to know your favorite book and your favorite movie, or we'd have forms that we'd have students fill out to get to know a little bit more about their culture or the food they like. And, it kept occurring to me that I was getting to know them on the surface, because again, I want to bring in some of those things. But I think what really struck me, in using Thrively in the classroom was we were getting to the heart of what students may or may not know about themselves. Because you're talking about, anywhere from, right, we have kids as early as kindergarten taking some of these assessments all the way up through 12th grade. And, with Castle looking at that self-awareness piece, I think that's the most transformative layer of this, is that I'm realizing something in myself that I might have an inkling about, but I can't put it on a form. I can't say, hey, guess what? I'm athletic. I didn't actually know I was athletic in 7th grade until a coach came up to me and said, well, you look kind of tall. Let's explore this, right? So I think that's a fascinating piece to all of this, is that we're highlighting things that they may not know. But I'd love to hear from some of you who I've promoted to talking, like, what are you seeing? Some of you, I recognize your names and you're using the strength assessment Do you have any stories that are resonating with you as Girish is sharing this? Please feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute, because we'd love for this to be a conversation. And, please interrupt me. Girish, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, and what comes to mind is recognizing with what Girish said, it's so important to honor students for who they are and recognizing their lived experiences. And a quote that I came across recently that said, no matter how much pedagogy we know, no matter how many degrees we have, unless our students know that we care, they will not learn from us. When they know you care, they thrive. They believe in themselves. And I've seen this happen over and over again throughout my teaching career. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing so much disruption and behavior issues because of the anxiety and trauma. But we know that when we're in the presence of caring adults, caring people, we can be vulnerable and ourselves, right? And we can say, hey, listen, I'm not ready to learn math today. I need some food. I need some sleep. We can give grace. So I know, Girish, you have so many stories of facilitators of learning, teachers that you've worked with who create this environment. Are there any that are kind of popping out to you that you'd like to share?
There are so many stories. One thing I should say, as an entrepreneur, I was wary of coming into the education because of some challenges there, but I'm loving it. I'm enjoying my life right now. Every day I hear stories from educators, how they're, using this information, and my, heart is filled with warmth every day. And I'll just, go over a few things, and I'm sure you have some stories to share as well. This is, a few years back when I was at Fullerton Elementary School District. I was going into one of the school, and the principal came and hugged me and said, you had to hear this story, you had to hear this story. And like, okay, what happened? What happened? And then she was saying, one of the kid, middle school, she was suspended for some behavioral issues, and they sent her to the principal's office. But the district they were using Thrively. And what the principal did is before the kid came in, she pulled up her strength profile. And then, when the kid came into the office, like, hey, look at your strengths, you're creative, you're analytical. And then she started talking about, like, for 10 minutes, all the assets of the kid. And then at the end of it, she said, what happened today in the class? And the kid was copiously crying. This is the best day of my life. No one has ever spoken to me in that language that you spoke with me today. The kid was just caring for the attention and all that, right? And our reaction was, suspending the kid for the behavior. It's a manifestation of some issue. But and she was so excited, the principal, that she made a change in that kid's life. And then I had to say, sorry, I had to tell 3, 4, 5 stories, because this is I live this every day, and so has Jeanette. And this is another teacher, Trisha Gee, in one of the middle school, and I'm going to change the names of the kids, but this Matthew, and he always gets like D's and E's. And teacher is a very nice kid. That's how the teacher, actually, she does the presentation, and then she talks about the story at the beginning of the presentation, and she's like, this time also, and she feels so bad for the kid. He's so nice kid, but obviously he's struggling academically. And this time again, he got a D or E, and then she went and gave him the report card and said, Matthew, sorry, you got a D this time also. But then she felt uncomfortable what she said, the way she said it. And then she immediately changed and said, Matthew, you'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Even if you got it, you'll be okay. And then the kid said, yeah, that's what Thrively told me. I'm a creative thinker. I'm an analyst extraordinaire. And then, she leads the strengths-based movement, and then she uses this story at the beginning of her presentation. And then I had to say another story. This is in Los Angeles Unified. And this teacher called me at 5 o'clock, Girish, I failed this kid, she said. And she was very, she was choking a little bit. I'm like, what happened? So this kid is known as a F grader. He gets always E's and F's in the class. That's how he's known as. The kid is not good in academics. And they had rolled out Thrively that day. And then the kids had taken the strength assessment, and they were supposed to create the portfolio. And then they were sharing all their portfolios and their assets. And the kid actually the school got to know that day, the kid was performing at Rose Bowl every day. Every year at the Rose Bowl. And no one knew about it. And he's going to become the next Pharrell Williams. And then he was known as an F grader. And teacher's eyes got popped. She's eyes popped out. And then she was like, I failed this kid. I had no idea about this. And, simple examples, like a counselor, she was telling her story one day. There were 3 kids in the class. They were always fighting with each other, and they were kind of sent to the counselor. And then she pulled a strength assessment of these kids, and all of them had leadership as one of the top strengths. So she pulled the kids and said, kiddos, there are 2 ways you can go. You all have leaders you can keep fighting, or because you have leadership as a strength, you can all work together, collaborate together. And the kids felt so good because they didn't know much about each other. And now, they are best pals, right? Well, I can go on because, every day, every week, and I hear these heartwarming stories. And that is it. I think, Paul said it beautifully. When a kid feels I'm known, so my principal knows me, my teacher knows me, someone knows me, they're running around the campus with joy, right? We talk about in Thrively, we call the strengths wall. So the strength profile after the kids have done it, if we can post that on a wall, because some schools have done that, and Janet, you can share that story. And when the kids are walking down the hallway every day, if we can have that, the assets of the kid and their, avatar hanging there on the wall or in the classroom, how happy the kid will feel every day coming into the classroom. And that is how you build the joy of learning, because I'm known here, my well-being is taken care of, I'm hopeful. Now you put all the curriculum in front of them, they are ready to consume that, right?
Well, and we're not even touching we're on the tip of the iceberg in terms of strengths. And what's really exciting is the conversations that are happening in school districts right now around, now that we have this information, this deeper information that students aren't giving us, but they're, through the assessment, being able to uncover, what decisions do we make from this? How do we go about connecting to content? How do we go about creating learning opportunities that not only are driven by standards, content standards, but they're driven by holistic views? Because we've been talking for years, probably 2 decades now, about these essential skills that students need for the workforce, right? And I think the research is showing that what Thrively is doing can make a huge impact for the happiness, not for the grade, as you mentioned, but for the happiness for a child's future, for the success of a child's future. So I want to kind of jump out of this.
I'm going to, interrupt there, Jeanette, because you made an interesting point about the grades and about their happiness. But what is fascinating for everyone to know, I'm sure most of you know this, I'm preaching the choir here. The hope is the primary predictor of academic success. So when kids are hopeful, that leads to increase in academic success. Engagement is the primary predictor of academic success. When kids are engaged, they are consuming the content, that leads to significant increase in academic outcome. And how do they become engaged? When they are known. When the kid feels my teacher knows me, then they become more engaged. Skills are the primary predictor of academic success. By the way, Amazon and Google and Microsoft, so they did this survey, and then the research comes to the conclusion that academic content only constitutes to 15% of success, and skills 85%. So I want to highlight here, because as educators, you are all measured by the academic outcomes, but hope, skills, engagement, they all lead to academic success. Okay, so I want to make sure that, because we are looking at the end result, but for you to drive towards academic success, the kids need to be hopeful, kids need to be engaged, kids' well-being need to be taken care of, and that's what leads to the academic success.
Yeah. And, some of these assessments are such quick wins. The Hope Index, the research behind this, and again, we'll share all this with you all, but the School of Hope, it's a 2-minute assessment. It lets me know, has there been any change in a child's life that has caused them to not feel hopeful, whether they can't see themselves getting to their goal, or they don't feel like they have agency over their own education or their survival in some cases, right? And the well-being index obviously is such a quick 60 seconds to check in with students daily. And we know that things can happen when they go home. Many of us who taught in urban environments know that, you know, one day a student can be there and just happy and joyful and learning, and the next day it turns, and it turns fast. So this really gives us the information to be able to listen, learn, as you mentioned, know more, so that we can be responsive, we can celebrate them, all of those things. And I'm really curious for our group that has joined us, and we only have about 5 minutes left. What are you all doing to bring an asset-based education to your environment, to your school, to your district? And really, Grish and I and my whole team here at Thrively are very passionate about making this a movement. If we focus on teachers, and Grish, you've often mentioned, you know, this isn't just about students, this is about teachers. How does that unfold? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you know, when it's so that is purposefully we say in Thrively it's learner centered, and when we talk about learner centered, you know, it's both adult learner and the kids. So when the teachers are not hopeful, you know, the kids are not going to be hopeful, and teachers' well-being is not taken care of. Okay, you know, we can't expect much out of the kids. So one of the things we have done in Thrively is we call it culture of care, where, you know, the staff gets to take the strength assessment. This is, you know, principal and the staff taking together and then celebrating each other, right? What a great way to start the school year with, like, you know, everyone feeling, you know, we have reduced our teachers to science teacher, math teacher, ELA teacher, and then our kids are reduced to A grader, B grader, C grader, instead of looking at, you know, everyone for their assets and who they are. So start the year with, you know, educators' strengths, you know, being known to everyone, their well-being taken care of. So we also have a well-being check-in for you, so principals can support you guys, and then, you know, do the whole, you know, hope check-in as well. And I think Janet had shared that research, hopeful teachers lead to successful kids, right? So we have connected all of that together. And, you know, the biggest challenge you see today, right, you know, how stressful the life of a teacher is. Okay, you know, you know, obviously as a parent, before I started Thrively, I used to quip about teachers, right? Okay, you know, whatever happens with my son is like, oh, maybe my teachers don't know my kids and all that. But I've become the biggest supporter of teachers now. Okay, so I'm here to support you guys, need to understand that. So that's why we created all these instruments for your well-being, your hope, you know, knowing who you are and celebrating who you are. And, you know, that's the, and, you know, when you go into the classroom and then tell the kids, these are my strengths, what are your strengths? And, you know, the magic that is happening in 20 minutes, you don't know that kid, and 20 minutes later, the kid is raising their hand and say, ma'am, I'm also creative like you. I'm also verbal like you, right? And then all of a sudden, strengths become the lexicon, the taxonomy, the vocabulary for you to connect with the kids. Now kid feels like, oh, I'm like this. I'm also like my teacher. I also have these strengths of the teacher. Now you are creating that joyful learning environment in the class, so less stressful for you. Okay, so Thrively is not just for, you know, thriving kids, it is thriving adults, because, you know, when kids are stressed, I'm positive, you know, you feel the stress yourself. So how do we kind of, you know, that is why the asset-based environment, asset-based learning, when we talk about joyful learning environment, it is that whole culture, changing that whole culture. And we want to kind of get that from the superintendent down. So when we talk about, you know, strengths-based movement, as Janet said, ideally, all of you, we look at you because this is a legacy creating moments for all of us. Sorry, that's my job to do that. And, you know, if you can talk to your superintendents and like, let's start that, right? The whole strengths-based, asset-based. And, you know, we talk about 2 hours in a year. If we get 2 hours, we can create that, the climate and culture and a joyful learning environment where strengths become the vocabulary, the lexicon, rather than deficit and, you know, suspensions and all that. So change that whole language there. And, you know, we hopefully, you know, we get support from you all in making that happen.
Absolutely. Well, and to share that story that you just mentioned earlier, you know, we learn from all of you. And so, like I said, I've given you guys all the ability to share your stories. One particular story in Minnesota, we had a school create a strengths night, and she has a strengths toolkit that she's created. I mean, so much of what you take as educators from, you know, many resources out there and make it your own will benefit the whole. And we are all about sharing. The team here at Thrively, like you see here on the screen, we're all about not just a typical onboarding. We get to know your environment. We learn about you and your strengths, areas that can support this growth. And then you give back to us ideas. And it's this wonderful moment where we get to share with everybody. So the question is coming in here. So do teachers have access to PD in the playlist? We do have wonderful courses. We've got a hope and a strengths course for teachers that you can take. And again, I just put a resource in for those of you, some of you had to join late. There's a form in here. If you fill it out, we're happy to send you anything that you're kind of needing right now, whether it's PD, or it's, you know, this idea around hope that's really resonating with a lot of people. But we're happy to kind of customize. It's not just an online platform. We are real people back here. Girish is, you know, is here and helping us grow into what will be a movement. And you can see from this, we've got videos that students are sharing about how they just are engaging with Thrively and learning about what their future holds. I have an organization, I know I have someone on the call here. I have an organization that's using it for their career and action plan. And it's now relevant for kids as opposed to just checking off a box. So I know we're coming to the end of the time. I want to close out with Girish. Any final call to action for our educators here? We have a lot of teachers out there, a lot of educators using the platform. What do you want our attendees to go and do next?
Yeah, you know, my again, as I said at the beginning, my Thrively started as a personal journey for me. Education, you know, especially with the COVID and what has happened over the last 3 years, a lot of kids are stressed, teachers are stressed. So, you know, asset-based learning, asset-based education is the need of the hour. Okay, and you know, thank you for, you know, you being champions of that. But again, you know, individual teacher can only do that much, you know, for us to change the, you know, for us to be a larger movement. So we would really appreciate if you guys can bring this to your superintendent, bring this to your principal, and we can, you know, set up a PD to kind of walk through what we can do there. And, you know, once we create that, you know, joyful learning environment, everyone is thriving. Okay, and, you know, we talk about equity. We have been talking about equity for too long, but still a large percentage of kids, you know, they don't have a joyful learning for themselves. So thank you for joining and for all your support in creating a, you know, joyful learning environment for our kids and for us adults.
Absolutely. Well, we are happy to stay on. I know I've given you guys opportunities for the floor, but if anybody would like to stay on for a minute or two, Girish and I are happy to answer questions, especially if they're individual questions about your environment. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. And we really appreciate all that you're doing out there. So keep on doing great work and let us know how we can best support you as well. Thank you. And Girish, thank you for building this organization and for creating what will be a pivot point for education. We need it. Educators need it. Students need it. So
you know, I say that, you know, there is no, I don't get any credit. It's all because of you educators. You know, you believe in it. And so my job is just as a technologist kind of creating that platform for you guys. But the hard work is done by you guys. So thank you for everything you're doing to help.
Thank you, Girish and Jeanette. Thank you, Thrively, and happy belated birthday, Girish.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you, Paul.
Elizabeth has some questions. Elizabeth, would you like to post them in the chat or come off mute?
So I have just a few questions. I have been working in this high school for over 20 years. I've been in education for 26 years. And I'm also school board member for the elementary school in my community. Mm-hmm. And I work for the high school in my community. So I see the transition from our littles to the high school. And you both are on point right now. Our children are really struggling. I've never seen them in such distress as I see them now. And we just had a conversation here at the high school level about all the different things that are happening with our students, the behaviors, the, as Garish was saying, they're not engaged, which then the lack of engagement causes all this domino effect, right? Of discipline and fighting, you name it, it's happening. And so as a board member and as an employee here, I'm looking at it in different directions. We do not have this program. We are in a crisis point now where we are, as adults, feel like we're not in a safe environment anymore. And so it's gotten to where it feels unsafe because students are so, the fights have intensified and they're so brutal at this point.
Yeah.
We're afraid of a student coming in with a weapon. And our hopes, I don't know where to go from where we are. And, I was so interested in this, what I saw, and I'm just hoping we do PBIS. We have all of these acronyms that are here, capturing kids' heart. We've had, all of these things, and it just, I don't know. Our teachers are tired. Our teachers are frustrated.
Yeah.
We feel the administration isn't doing anything about the behaviors, but then again, I don't know that they have the tools to know what to do at this point.
Right. No, you are,
Elizabeth, we should definitely connect. So let us know. I think you have our contact information, so definitely we should talk. And thank you for being so open about it.
Yeah.
And we think we can definitely help.
Okay, great.
I'm going to put both of you are saying the same thing. You're not alone. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't maybe make you feel good, because obviously we don't want that feeling across the board.
Right.
But the reality is we as adults, and listen, I worked in Chicago Public Schools 15 years, very high needs environments. I want you to come back to that moment in time, again, why you became a teacher and what was going on, what were we focusing on? And not that it was ever perfect back then, but when we focus on the humans in front of us, and again, this is where strengths and hope and well-being come in, when we give time and space to that exploration, their hope is not lost, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because you just have to kind of peel back. What my former principal used to say, peel back the onion, find the root cause.
With Liliana, he would sign in.
Peel back that onion and find out what are the root cause. What are, these behaviors? You're scared because students are coming to school and sometimes with violent thoughts. Well, where are those violent thoughts coming from? And so how do we counteract that? And I think, Garish, you said it very first thing. You talked about, the neural pathways. Sometimes it's just recreating some neural pathways. So we're super happy to have this discussion. We have so many experts that are on our team that can address some of the things that you're mentioning. So I put our email addresses in the chat.
Thank you. I wrote them
feel
down.
free to read. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. You're welcome.
Well, I appreciate all the work and your dedication, because I know as educators, I wish, as a country, we would look and prioritize education and its needs, and fund it the way it needs to be funded, and not try to piecemeal, all these supports right now and beg our governors or our, education system to give us what we need, just to, because it isn't about just educating them anymore. It's the whole child. And if, with some of our children, we've realized, they're coming from single family homes. They have one, that parent struggling to put food on the table, to
Mhm.
provide these things. These are the kids that we're talking about right now that are coming onto campus that are not, if you have all of those things happening in your home, of
Mhm.
course you're not going to come to school in a mindset ready to learn. Nobody would be,
Yeah.
even as an adult.
Right. Yeah.
Elizabeth, yeah, we are going to, let's talk more. I think, others are also listening to that. Just want to say one thing, because I think it applies to many of us here. Hope is, there is a lot of awesome research coming out of hope. The kids who are stressed and the scenarios that you discussed, how do we instill hope in those kids? The beautiful thing about hope is hope has got nothing to do with poverty or any of the challenges in life. They actually looked at Oprah, who was sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused, high poverty. How did Oprah become Oprah? Because she had high hope. So what we need to do, Elizabeth, is to instill hope in all the kids in your district. Then the magic starts happening there.
Mhm.
And we can change the poverty level overnight. We can change the conditions at home, but helping kids develop hope, which will help develop resilience, so they know how to overcome the problems, is the first step towards that. So we'll talk more about that. I'm bringing it up because I'm sure if and others have similar situations, that is where the hope index and well-being index can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Anyone else that's still here? We're happy to answer any questions live. That was a great one, Elizabeth. Well, you can reach us, obviously, on those emails, and thank you for filling out the form. To those of you who did, we will definitely reach out and share all the resources. And again, thank you, Girish, for your time and for all of the effort that you give to this organization. And thank you to you all for your just energy and hope and continuing to put what you know is important, this asset-based approach. So tomorrow, I hope you go out and ask your students, have them take the strength assessment and really dive into that idea around strengths. And you all have strengths too. So don't forget to take care. It's like the parent teacher thing, right? We have to take care of ourselves first. We have to put our oxygen mask on first. So I really hope you all focus on your own strengths as well. And thank you again. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you at our next webinar in 2 weeks, talking about skills. Thanks, Girish. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.